Hello and welcome. I'm coming back to you on Simply Nitin after a 2-week break. I hope all of you had an excellent Diwali and of course you're keeping safe in these COVID times. The attention of the world and especially those in Asia is being focused on the India-China standoff along the line of actual control in Ladakh for the past 6 months. But simultaneously, there has been a lot of action in the Indian Ocean region and of course the South China Sea in the meantime. That's the focus of this week's episode of Simply Nitin. I'm Nitin Gokhale. So what's happening in the Indian Ocean or in the maritime domain? While China continues to be aggressive in the South China Sea and has announced a series of military exercises to take place in the South China Sea, warning the nations around the region that it will be conducting military drills this week. The tension between Taiwan and China on one hand, between Japan and China on the other, and of course all along the Indian Ocean region between all other nations and China has been increasing for various reasons. Of course, India and the United States, which have signed the third and the final foundational agreement to give India access to geospatial data and real-time intelligence in maritime as well as in space domain, the BECA agreement as they call it. While BECA and other agreements signed in the 2+2 meeting between Indian ministers and the United States ministers, the Chinese hackles have been raised because the activity of various navies, including the United States, Japan, Australia and India, have increased in the Indo-Pacific, not just in the Indian Ocean. Exercise Malabar, a trilateral exercise so far between India, United States and Japan, has now been expanded after 13 years to invite Australia to join this edition of Malabar exercise. Even as we speak, the second phase of exercise Malabar is on in the North Arabian Sea. The first phase happened in the Indian Ocean. The last such occasion was in 2007 when even Singapore had joined the four nations, India, United States, Japan and Australia, to conduct exercise Malabar, is happening this year in 2020. This is no coincidence. China knows it and the world knows it. The Indian Ocean region is now the area of big contestation, the new playground for the great game of the 21st century, if you can describe it like that. If you look at India's policy in the Indian Ocean since 2015, it is comprehensive, it is inclusive, and it is designed to bring together varied nations in a network of economic and development partnerships. If you look at the Vanilla Islands, Madagascar, Mauritius, Seychelles and Comoros, they have received huge Indian help, Indian aid in developing their ports, their facilities along the coast and other development initiatives taken by India have enabled them to raise their development activities in the region. Similarly, one of the understated aspects of India's policy has been the outreach to African nations, especially on the eastern seaboard of Africa. Only one nation, Mozambique, gets nearly 20% of India's total outreach or total aid to African nations since 2015. India is developing and giving training to Mozambique's intelligence agencies, its armed forces. India has sent out ships to Mozambique when it faced a natural calamity. Recently, you would have heard India also reached out to Djibouti and other smaller African nations with food aid in the time of pandemic and during the COVID. Similarly, if you come eastward, India's relations with Maldives, Sri Lanka and of course Indonesia have improved tremendously over the past 4 years. The trilateral maritime agreement between India, Maldives and Sri Lanka has been reactivated. The intelligence sharing between United States, India, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, and of course the other island nations that I mentioned in the northern Indian Ocean has also improved. Now, why is that happening? Because India thinks that forums like IORA and IONS, which bring together nations in the Indian Ocean, the littoral nations in the Indian Ocean, the smaller nations in the Indian Ocean, they are bound by this network which is based on the premise of consultation and cooperation. India is seen as a non-threatening, valued partner by these nations. And if you move eastwards towards South China Sea and then beyond, even smaller nations there are looking for India's help and India's support in trying to stand up to China. That is something that has not happened by accident. If you will remember, Prime Minister Modi has had trips to Fiji, to Australia earlier, and the smaller nations, the Pacific Island nations in the last 4 years. Now, this is a very well thought out, well calibrated strategy of bringing together nations across the Indian Ocean and parts of Pacific. And this is part of the Indo-Pacific construct that India is trying to build along with the United States and of course now Australia. Australia, as I said, has been invited to join the exercise Malabar after a gap of 13 years, and that's because India thinks now that it's time to send a strong message to China that its aggression, its belligerence cannot be tolerated beyond a point. Of course, all of you know the steps that India has taken in terms of economic sanctions or banning apps which originated in China, also putting up FDI barriers to companies that are invested in China or are investing from China. All that is happening. So in one stroke, because of China's own aggression and belligerence, it has brought together disparate nations. They have brought together nations which had some differences, but now everyone is coming together. The Blue Dot Network, the Network of Economic Prosperity, which includes South Korea, New Zealand and Vietnam. All of these are ranged against Chinese actions. Phase 2 of exercise Malabar, as you would have read in the papers and also seen on TV, is witnessing joint operations centered around 2 carrier battle groups. One which is centered around INS Vikramaditya, India's lone aircraft carrier, and the other around Nimitz Carrier Strike Group, which is the USS Nimitz aircraft carrier of the United States. These 2 carriers, along with ships, submarines, aircraft, are participating along with the Japanese Navy, the Australian Navy, and are carrying out complex maneuvers, practicing interoperability and trying to carry out cross-deck flying operations. In addition, advanced surface and anti-submarine warfare exercises, trying to understand how submarines operate with each other and what kind of maneuvers they need to do. Also replenishing fuel or fueling ships of different navies from India's tankers, Indian oil tankers, which are ship-based oil tankers, is also carried out to create a synergy which is unheard of in the recent years, say at least for the last decade or so. Now, this is something that China will be watching very closely. China would also be little concerned about this because by these exercises, these navies are demonstrating that whenever they want, from the Western Pacific right down to the Western Indian Ocean, these navies can actually counter any aggressive maneuvers by the Chinese Navy, which is increasingly coming into the Indian Ocean region, trying to assert itself, telling various interlocutors at various forums that Indian Ocean is not India's ocean. Well, it may not be India's ocean, it's everybody's ocean, but increasingly the Chinese will feel isolated because of what I have described just now. This is something that I wanted to highlight. You may have read and heard about all this in fragments and reports, standalone reports over the years, but this is what I thought I'll put together for your benefit and to understand how a new strategy is shaping up in the region. Indo-Pacific is now the center of gravity as far as geopolitics is concerned. And that's why one has to watch it very carefully, the way it develops, the way Andaman Nicobar Islands will come into play as these things progress, and how India is going to develop Andaman Nicobar Islands for its own benefit and also create a deterrence against increasing Chinese forays into the region. That's all I have this week. But having resumed Simply Nitin, do keep watching it as you have been watching for the last 6 months or so. Keep sending feedback. Of course, like us on our Facebook, Twitter and Instagram accounts. And of course, keep sending comments, which are welcome. And we will, of course, take them up if there are any suggestions. Until the next time, it's goodbye.